Welcome to In the Zone, number 20 already, and it's we got a local boy here, Mr. Jon Watt. Welcome, John.
Thank you, sir.
You know, In the Zone is pretty much, I'll call it an impromptu sit-down discussion, where you started from, what you've done, where you're going. So you were born and raised in St. Clair?
Actually, I was born in Almont.
Okay.
And I spent a long 6 weeks there.
Okay.
I was born in July, and we moved here in August of '59 and been here ever since.
Was an educator and coach.
Both my mother and father retired from East China schools. My dad taught, he taught English and phys ed, and he was the varsity basketball coach along with other sports, but varsity basketball coach for 15 years until 1974.
So some people might not know their names, your father and mother's names.
Arvid Watt and Jackie Watt. Jackie, she taught at the old elementary school on Meisner Road when it was there, and then it moved over to, then she was over to Pine River and retired there. My dad's first basketball team was fall of '59, spring of '60, that year, '59-60, and his starting point guard was Fred Shaw.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they ended up going 16-0 that year. I think it's the last time that, and that was their regular season record. I don't know what they did in the districts, but he ended up going 16-0 with Fred's team.
Okay.
So.
Now that's one thing that Fred did not tell me, so we'll have to have Fred back and have him tell me that. Because Fred's list of things is about this long.
Fred's been a friend of the family forever.
Yeah.
So.
Fred brought in his resume, sort of, I mean, because he's been at it for all those years. So is your mother a native of St. Clair?
No, they're both natives of Marion, Michigan, which is up by Cadillac in that area.
Okay. So, siblings?
My oldest brother, Doug, graduated in 1970 from St. Clair. My middle brother, Brian, graduated in '74. He was killed when he was in the service. Matter of fact, they just put down his picture that was hanging. He was in a coma for 15 years, injured in the Army. Oh, okay. So he was born, he graduated in '74, I graduated in '77. And then my little sister, Angela, graduated in '88, all from St. Clair High School. And that was the year that my father retired from teaching, was in '88.
Now, did your father coach or teach you?
He didn't with St. Clair sports. He did the sports growing up, but that was always was my dream to play for my dad. My two older brothers got a chance to do that, but he retired in '74, and then I graduated in '77. So I did not get the opportunity to play basketball for him.
So how was it as a teenager, though, playing, say, varsity sports? Your father is a basketball guru and did it for a lot of years. He still had to be talking at the dinner table and.
When he retired from coaching, he was the athletic director.
Right.
So I loved it. I loved it. But you know, you learn a different thing, because I've come full circle. When I got into coaching, I started coaching my daughters.
Sure.
And I think the hardest thing to do for a kid is to play for your parent.
Right.
It's hard because you're harder on your kid than you are the other kids. But I wanted to have that opportunity to be able to do that. Like I said, playing football and playing baseball growing up, I played for my father, but just never had a chance to play basketball for him.
Okay. Did you play football for Ben Vidakevich?
I did in that system, yeah. My freshman and sophomore year, I didn't play varsity football.
Okay.
But Ben was the head coach then, yes.
Yeah, okay. So you go to college. Where did you go to college?
Went to SC4 for 2 years, like I think everybody should initially going starting off, and then went to Central Michigan, got my degree in business education. So I had a major in business and a minor in phys ed and coaching.
Okay. And then, then from college, what did you do directly after college?
When I graduated in December of '81, and there weren't any teaching jobs in Michigan. And so I kept going, further west. I had a job in Indiana for 6 months, from January basically until June. It was a pregnancy leave for a teacher. And then I was in Illinois for 2 years until until we had our first child, and then we decided to move back to the area. So we were out of state for 3 years.
And then you taught where locally?
Port Huron High.
Okay.
Taught at PH for 5 years.
Okay.
And my wife is just retired. She was 35 years in the Port Huron Area School District.
Okay. And what did you mainly teach?
Business education, so I had marketing. My last 3 years of teaching at PH, I ran the school store.
Okay.
So I ran a sales and a marketing class, and they're basically two different sets of 2-hour blocks, and then those kids ran the store. I mean, they did everything from ordering products to promotion and selling, the whole bit. It was basically a store under the walls and the confines of a school. Okay. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
And so where did you go from Port Huron?
Well, I was told that I was going to be repositioned, I think they called it, because the numbers were down. I had a person who was going to bump me. So I decided, and this would have been in the spring of 88. And I sent out resumes because I had a friend of mine who was in the pharmaceutical business. And I said, I might as well start sending things out because I got placed in alternative education in Port Huron. Okay. Kids that get kicked out of 7th and 8th grade in high school. And I figured that wasn't where I wanted to be. So I sent out all these resumes to all these pharmaceutical companies, didn't hear a thing. Until Christmas break that year, I got a call from Bayer Pharmaceuticals, and they wanted to interview me, so they offered me the job, and I didn't go back after Christmas break, and I was in the pharma industry in sales and management for 20 years.
Okay, okay. But then you came back.
Then I came back, yeah.
Explain that.
Well, I came back after I got out of the pharmaceutical business in 2010. I spent about 4 or 5 years in different sales and management positions, and then I started my own company in 2017. And I'm John Maxwell certified speaker trainer and coach, and do a lot of things around leadership. And I started that in 17 and still doing it right now. The name of my company is called Coach for Life, and life is an acronym for leadership, being intentional, faith, and equip.
Okay. Now, before we go on to that, you coached also at a school just north of us here, right?
Yeah, I've coached for 35 years.
Okay.
I had to write it down because it had been so long. I couldn't figure out what I taught when I was at SC4. I taught or coached 7th and 8th grade basketball at Holy Cross.
Okay.
So that's where I kind of started off.
That's where I got the lead to talk to you.
That's okay. I was hired by Vic McDonald down there, and Vic's still down there. And so I coached there for 2 years, and I really got the bug because when I was going to college, I didn't know what to do. And my dad said, this was his advice. He says, well, if you're going to go into coaching, you got to teach something. I'm like, well, I don't want to teach history or math or whatever, so I thought business. He says that the thing is that if you're going to go into education, you're going to get a teaching job. He says, marry a teacher. So that's what I did. I mean, that was his advice. So then I
followed it to a T.
Exactly. I coached 2 years in Illinois, and then when we came back from Illinois, I coached 5 years. 4 of the 5 years that I was in the Port Huron School District at PH, and I had the varsity boys basketball team at New Haven for 1 year. Okay. From there, in 1990, when Dale Voss was hired at SC4, he hired me as his assistant. And from 1990 until 2010, off and on, basically worked with him for 15 years. I did a lot of different things with Dale. So a lot of things going on there. Between 2011 and 2012, when my daughter was a freshman and a sophomore, I coached JV girls basketball under Brad Robbins. And then since 2013 to just this past May, I was coaching the boys varsity basketball team at Merritt Academy in New Haven, which is a charter school. Okay. So I just finished my 9th year, and it just got to be the point where I thought it was time to give up that part of coaching. Of
so now, Merritt Academy is just north of town.
It's right on Haven Ridge Road.
Haven Ridge Road, where you go to town, you go to the railroad tracks, you make a right, and you go north, and it's about 2 miles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, how big a school is that?
It's a Class D. There's about 160 kids in the high school.
Okay.
So they have it's K through 12,
okay.
And they started off as just being a K through 8, and they've been growing. When I got there 9 years ago, we had 8 kids on the varsity basketball team. Okay. Last year we had 24 kids in the program. We had a JV. I think out of the 9 years we had a JV team 4 of those 9 years. It all depends on
Merritt Academy, just from I'll call it Blue Water area standpoint, seems to be one of those schools that sort of gets lost in the shuffle about people knowing where they're at, right?
Nobody has any clue.
Nobody knows.
Because they don't even the area doesn't even cover New Haven public.
Correct.
Unless they're in the state championship, and then they cover New Haven.
Right.
And that happened a couple times. But no, we were forgotten. We're in Macomb County, obviously. But I mean, we played Landmark and New Life in this area. Then the rest of our teams in our league are in Flint. So.
Are you playing Cardinal Mooney at all?
We played Cardinal Mooney a little bit. They're always in our district.
Okay.
Cardinal Mooney's heads above where we were at.
Sure.
So.
That's interesting, though.
But they're about the same size as Merritt.
Okay. Yep. So your mentors for coaching and teaching, obviously your father and your mother. Any other coaches?
My father and my mother, Gary Tomlin, who's local, he coached me. We had him 2 years, my freshman and my JV year, so I learned a lot from Gary. I just learned a lot from a lot of different coaches. I mean, I think growing up, one of my favorite coaches was Bobby Knight. And we had a chance when I was in Illinois, I coached at Lockport high school, and they were in the process of pursuing the state championship. And the head coach at that time was what I would call the Walt Braun of the area in basketball out there, and he used to go and do speaking tours in the fall.
Sure.
And kind of go around with him. So I got a chance to meet Knight, and do things. So I think Bobby Knight is the kind of guy, I like the way his tenacity and X's and O's.
Right.
I don't necessarily like the way he acts and that,
Right.
But you have to take it with a grain of salt. So I really like, and obviously nowadays it's a guy like Izzo who,
Sure.
But I think a lot of it isn't just coaching that I followed, I try to model my life after. It's a district manager that I had when I was in pharmaceutical sales, taught me a lot. And that's the thing about coaching. I don't care if it's coaching life or coaching sports or whatever.
Sure.
You need to have somebody that's not necessarily going to show you the way, but allow you to make mistakes along the way and
Right.
correct you, and then you kind of go that way. And that's what I like to have, is the ability to, if somebody just tells you what to do, the learning process is kind of cut.
Right.
You have to learn by your failure.
Now, Coach for Life is interesting to me because, like, coming from a sales background, I look at it where sales is really no different than a lot of other occupations, from the aspect that there's about, and I'm paraphrasing a number, but there's about 12 or 15 things that if you can master those, the basics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had talked earlier before the camera turned on, but like Zig Ziglar and that whole thing, the positive mental attitude, being ready, being prepared, and then you go back to the sporting scenario. It's all the preparation.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people do. A lot of people don't realize, for example, that Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, all these people, they all have coaches.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah.
And every day they, hit 1,000 balls or whatever the number might be, and somebody's there to critique it and tell them how to do it differently. And no different than, like, Tiger Woods probably is a good example of, he's now, mid-40s?
Mm-hmm.
He's probably coached differently today than he was 20 years ago, because his body is different today than it was 20 years
Right.
ago.
And it isn't always the physical approach either, too. A lot of the things that I focus on is the mindset. I mean,
Right.
and you use the Tiger Woods example. I mean, it's great. I mean, he believes he's going to win. And we used to have this kind of a joke when we were playing Marysville in football. They knew they were going to win when they stepped on the field, and we knew at St. Clair that we were going to lose to them in football.
Right.
And that's that whole mindset. And that can happen with sales or in anything. I mean, if it's the old story about, the little train. If you think you can, you think you can. If you think you can't, you can't. Either way, you're right. So that's where I spend a lot of time with coaching, is just kind of getting the mindset, increasing people's levels of awareness.
Right. I remember another one that I have in my office. I think it's Henry Ford said, if you think you can or can't, you're right. Mm-hmm. Basically gets along the same thing. Mm-hmm. So when you're Coach for Life and this leadership, how many people are you talking to where you're actually coaching at a time?
I can do group coaching also. A lot of times it's one-on-one with C-levels, but there is some group coaching. And what I involve that with is what we call DISC, which DISC stands for Deeper Insight, Stronger Communication. A lot of times when you're communicating with people and you have this block, I call, a lot of it is because of their lack of awareness. And their lack of awareness can be based on the communication.
Sure.
So you deal it from the communication standpoint, and you also do it by increasing their level of awareness. Because Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life, and you'll call it fate. So a lot of times, it's just a matter of making people aware of what they may not be aware of. Right. And then all of a sudden they're like, and that's why coaches have their players watch film, because they tell them what they're doing, and they don't believe it. You show them, and they're like, oh, okay, now I'll get it.
Now, explain to our viewers what level C means.
Level C, that is your C-suite, your people who are your controllers, your executives. Mm-hmm. It can be your directors, but usually it's your CEOs, CFOs.
Okay. Do a lot of coaching with small business or more big?
Like I'm working with a broker right now. I've worked with medical people that have large companies. It varies. Okay. And work with individuals who aren't even in business themselves. They just want to work on their own personal set. So it can be from personal individuals up to C-suite. Okay. And again, I can be as busy as I want to. It's really exciting right now.
In general, what is your scope of business? Is it Metro Detroit smaller Blue Water area, or?
I would say Metro Detroit.
Okay.
I would say Metro Detroit. That's where the primary, where it is, but I am in the process of doing some things on the west side of the state too.
Okay.
I have a program called Live to Lead, where it's a simulcast national speakers, and I'm taking that outside of the Blue Water area. I've had it in the Blue Water area for 4 of the last 5 years, and I want to take that out a little bit more to expand my reach.
Okay. Any defining moments as a coach or teacher?
Whenever I coach my kids, and I had the opportunity, I have 3 girls. 2 of them were really not involved in sports, maybe a little bit, my middle daughter a little bit in volleyball, but my youngest daughter was big into travel softball, so having the opportunity to coach her and do that, and then coach her in basketball, having the opportunity to relate with them, because they appreciate you a little bit more, not because you've coached them, but their peers, you're coaching their peers, and they say, hey, your dad knows what he's talking about, and then they learn it that way. So I think that, but from the standpoint of probably, there's a couple things. I remember with Dale Voss, Dale got hired, and SC4 had a losing streak. It was epic. I want to say it was in 80s or 90 games in a row that SC4 had lost.
Basketball, yeah.
In basketball. And when Dale got hired and he hired me, their first game we coached, it was in Flint, got to win the first game, so that streak was broken. So that was kind of cool to be able to do something like that. But I think kind of winning leagues, this past year we won our 4th straight league championship at Merritt. So winning isn't everything. I mean, I think my 2nd year at Merritt, when we struggled, I had the most fun there because the kids were really teachable and coachable. Sure. So it isn't all about winning, but as long as you're doing all the work, the winning's kind of fun.
Well, and the other thing too is, especially like in high school, the goal in mind really is to make these kids better adults, right?
Exactly.
So that when they're in the world, when they're going to college and they're learning, they're better adults. The better adults that we can, I'll use the term process through schooling, the less problems we have as a society, and things go smoother, right?
Yeah, and one of the reasons I got in and wanted to start my own business is my first year coaching at Merritt, we won the district championship. We beat Cardinal Mooney and had a player there who had worked at a pizza place in New Haven. And he graduated that first year that I was there, and he called me the summer after he graduated. He said, hey, Coach, they want me to be the manager here at the store. I said, oh, that's great, Garrett. That's fantastic. He says, I don't know if I can do it. I said, Garrett, you sound just like you did when we talked about going in for a layup or doing whatever. And he's like, you can do this. He said, are you sure? Heck yeah. About 3 years later, he calls me up. He says, Coach, you're not going to believe this. I said, what's that? He said, the owner of the franchise wants me to move to Cleveland and help him get 3 or 4 of those started over there. I said, that's awesome. He says, I don't know if I can do this. I said, we had this conversation 3 years ago.
Right.
So when you look back what you do coaching sports, like you said, it's working with the individual, giving them the belief that they can have success. And they are going to fail along the way, but there's nothing wrong with that. And he just needed reassurance. I can't do this. And then now he's successful in Cleveland. I think he even owns a couple franchises out there. So.
Well, if it's like a lot of things in life. When you look at sports as a scenario, people think, whether it's kids that are 8, 10, 12 years old, they struck out, or they went 1 for 3. The best major league players basically will hit 300 or less, right? I mean, you don't get many 350 hitters. Tony Gwynn was probably one of the higher ones that we watched. It was 330, 340 lifetime, but not many of those, right? Mm-hmm. You get some of these seasoned pros that are the Don Mattingleys of the world, and probably in the 280s, 290s, right? Mm-hmm. So that means they went up to bat 100 times, and they were successful, 30 out of 100 or less.
That's what I like about a guy like Miggy, because Miggy struggles, but you never know that he struggles.
Right.
Because he knows that he's a good hitter, and it's just a matter of time. Right. And so no matter what you do, if you have that assurance that, you are going to fail, but I'm going to keep getting up to bat, the worst thing you can do is not get up to bat, because then you are going to fail.
Right. Yep. So, you've been doing sales and coaching for most of your life.
Even when I taught school, I taught sales, so it's been the whole thing. That's why, the Coach for Life, even though life is an acronym for the leadership,
Yep.
intentional faith, and equip, life is what I've done coaching for
Right.
my entire life.
Right.
So
Give me an idea, not by name, but by industry, of say some that you have going now, or say the last 6 months, if you can think of some of the people you're coaching. Industries.
pharmaceutical.
Okay. Rep.
What's that?
Pharmaceutical rep.
Yeah.
Okay.
That I've been working with,
Yeah,
you say?
yeah.
Yeah. Medical equipment,
Okay.
realty, insurance,
Now, realty, a local salesperson or broker?
both.
That don't, okay.
Both.
Some of both.
Yeah. Some local entrepreneurs are usually the best because, local entrepreneurs have got the idea of what they want, they got the product, they got the idea, but then they're stuck with it. Now what? So work with them. A lot of that too is in awareness, could
Sure.
be in communication. So there's, and basic sales, but a lot of it, because of my background in sales, it may be in a nursing program too,
Okay.
not in a nursing school, but a nursing organization.
Sure.
I've worked with, and then worked with the C-levels within those too.
Okay.
But I try to, you think about it, everything is sales. I don't
Right.
care if you're mom and dad trying to get your kid to wear a coat to school.
Right.
You're selling them on the idea that it's important that they wear it.
Exactly. And you'll find out why, and then they'll understand. Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay. We appreciate you coming by CTV6. Maybe we'll have you back after, maybe our go-round here of
That's
a number
awesome.
of people. We look forward to seeing you, Coach for Life, like you said, leadership intentional, faith and equip. So thank you for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
If anybody here wants to suggest somebody to come on CTV like John was, Dwayne Osterlin suggested to call
I
you.
coached Dwayne.
Yeah, exactly. How many years ago? 35?
Well, it was in 1977 and 78,
Right,
yeah.
right. So numbers on that screen, 586-707-5811. If you have anybody you'd like to suggest, please do call. Let me know who would be interested to come on the show. We'll see you next time. Thank you.